Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate being up here. I'm really excited to be here. This event is really, for me, a culmination of a promise I made 2 years ago at Appian World 2013 with our folks at Appian. I said, when we have a story to tell, let me come back and let's tell our story. So at the time I was thinking it'd be 2014. It took a little bit longer to put our story together, but we're here and I'm excited. I also want to thank Clay for taking that unenviable position of following Dr. Kaku. I'm very glad not to have been in that position. The last thing I'd like to say as a thank you, or actually a bone to pick with Dr. Kaku, if you saw one of his slides, he talked about agriculture being an industry that's not going to be growing. I, for one, enjoy eating. The last time I checked, we're not getting any smaller as a population. So I think the importance of agriculture is going to continue for, I think, as long as humans eat, unless there was something buried in one of his books about replicators. I didn't see anything when I was reading them. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our journey with Appian, and really our journey with Appian is more than just a product. For us, it's a journey to agile development, to delivery, to gaining control of our work. And I'll talk to you about how we got control of our work as we went through and developed over the course of the last 2.5 years. Before I get there, let me tell you a little bit more about crop insurance. Crop insurance is a pretty big business. We cover every year over $110 billion worth of agricultural value. Our premium base is about $10 billion. Last year we paid out $9 billion of indemnity. If you go back 2 years to the big drought in the Midwest, we paid out $17 billion of indemnity. So, huge program, but there's only a very tiny amount. So there's 120,000 people in the Department of Agriculture. There's less than 450 of us feds in risk management agency. So the way we do business is a public-private partnership. We determine everything associated with the crop insurance program: rates, prices, actuaries, loss adjustment standards, underwriting standards. We turn over and approve companies to then sell and service these policies across the country. So it's the power of the government regulating and determining the program, and the power of industry to go sell and service those policies. So before I go forward, I want to give you a little bit more background of where we found ourselves in the 2011-2012 time frame. So here's our requirements process back in 2011. Give you a chance to read it. The bottom line is our users want us to design software to tell them their requirements. Not a good place to be. And so that immediately made business process management very important. So I came from the Department of Defense, a little small organization called Naval Reactors, naval nuclear power. A bit controlling. I also worked on major acquisition programs. So I come to agriculture. We see this. Oh, you guys aren't managing requirements. I'm going to come in. I'm going to show you how we can control the work. We can manage, and program management will save us all. How do you think that turned out? Didn't work at all. So what we found was we spent 4 to 6 months planning a 4 to 6 month job. You saw the discussion earlier about Moore's Law. 12 months technology turnover. I would say if you look at software and hardware together, it's probably 12 months or less. If you talk to the Appian engineers, it's what, every 2 weeks the product is innovating. If you look at our business cycle, crop insurance is annual. You plant once a year. Well, you also plant spring and fall. So our business cycle is at best a 12-month cycle. So you're spending a third to half of your business cycle planning what software you're going to develop. There's no way that can possibly work. So we turned to the cure-all of anything is to go agile. Right? So we swung way to the left. We're going to do agile. We're going to do agile, right? That means code, baby, code. No requirements, no process. How did that work? didn't work very well. So we were wildly swinging from right to left. And then we came back right again and we said, oh, we need to get control of our Agile process. And we ended up what's called Buff Agile, right? I've heard water, scrum, fall. We call it Buff Agile, big upfront Agile. The problem with big upfront Agile is, and I think I'll use an analogy from a recent commercial, right? It's like Hans and Franz going to Aaron Rodgers and they're going to buff him up. He's going to be ready. The problem is, Aaron Rodgers is supposed to throw that 20-yard out pattern with perfect precision. You buff him up, you saw him, he threw the football, it went 5 feet. Right? So what you need in an Agile environment is not strength training. It's not the 5 blockers. It's not the guys that can clear the way. You do need people that can clear the way. That's my job. My job is to remove roadblocks, to grease the skids, to allow these teams to behave in an Agile manner and deliver things. So the author of this term, Buff Agile, is sitting right over there. Ron, stand up. So Ron is my application development lead. Ron is the guy who termed Buff Agile, and unfortunately in the government we're not allowed to trademark things, otherwise there'd be a little TM there. My job, and there's only 1 or 2 of us, is to clear those roadblocks so the Agile people like Ron can actually go deliver. So with respect to those who have said that we can go with, what is it, water scrum fall, in our experience it doesn't work. You've got to embrace agility. You've got to embrace the unknown. You've got to embrace that things are going to change or you're going to die. So a little bit of background about us and the start of our journey, right? We were hitting our heads at every turn. I ran into Appian probably the latter part of 2012. I looked at this platform and said, what a great way to model our processes so that I can get a handle on that lousy requirements process I showed you earlier. As I looked at the product, we took the free trial, and I'm sitting there going, wait, I can model the process and I can get software, working software by modeling this process. Now, I may be a CIO, but my programming experience is limited to a very small e-commerce site and Fortran, okay? So I'm not a developer. And I'm sitting there in this product and I can see that somebody even as unskilled as me in the development world could actually build product. We talked to the folks at Appian and you could see our start to Agile. They had a mature Agile development team, not only in their professional services, but in the engineering group that builds the product. So they eat their own dog food. They believe truly in this methodology of developing. I loved the idea of configured platforms versus custom code because at the time, I think we re-engineered a whole mess of our systems in 2010. I'm sitting in 2012 with a backlog of change requests that looked like 200 plus, some of which were over a year old. Most of which had to do with the fact that everything we did was custom. We have wonderful developers. They are creative. They create wonderful things. What they don't do is create code that is maintainable. So we were dying on the vine, unable to continue to innovate because we were cleaning up the mess from 2 years ago. So the idea of configured platform was wonderful. And of course in the federal government, the OMB says you got to get to the cloud. What I loved about the idea of platform as a service in the cloud was I could take a risk and I didn't have to spend a whole lot of my infrastructure team's time setting up the hosting environment. So it gave us an opportunity, it gave us an incentive to take a risk. So you have heard that the recommended methodology is start small, build yourself up, get some quick wins. We didn't do that. We decided to do something bold, and I think it had a lot to do with, I don't see David Johnson, our federal sales rep is a former naval aviator. Well, naval aviators tend to be a little bold. We talked ourselves into, instead of starting small, let's go re-engineer our escrow payment system, something that handles on a regular given week $500 million of payments. And in a given year, we'll pay out $9 billion of indemnities. Let's go work on that one because we'll make a difference there. So we said, let's do it. So a little bit about escrow. What our escrow system allows us to do is to speed the process by which we pay the insured. So when an insured comes in, submits a claim, the company will go and adjust that claim and validate that claim. They will then turn around and submit it to the government. Now prior to that, they would have established an escrow account. When they do that, when they submit the claim to us for reinsurance, the company has 3 days to pay the producer. When we validate that claim that's been submitted to us, we've got 3 days to fund the escrow account. So instead of months between submitting a claim, we're talking days, weeks, and days. Instead of waiting to reconcile accounts for 30 days, which is when we reconcile, now from a financial risk on the company, they're guaranteed that they're going to get that in 3 days. So if you look at 2012, 2013, 2014, $17 billion, $12 billion, and $9 billion of indemnities passed through our system. Peak payment periods are usually around $500 million a week. I've seen as high as $1.5 billion go through the system in a week. So the initial scope was we're going to take what we have in legacy. I don't even want to talk about what that was built in, and we're going to move it to the Appian Cloud. How did it go? It went well from a development standpoint. So we sprinted, we developed the system, we dealt with pain, the pain of things like a government shutdown in the middle of our development program, so good 17 to 20 days where we did nothing. We get to the end of the game, we have good product, but unfortunately we didn't close the deal, and it was primarily on the government side. So I talked about our immaturity in our agile development process. Poor communication with stakeholders. I think I'm underestimating. We relied on our business to communicate with those 20 companies. We assumed, bad job, we assumed that communication was happening. We go to production, no one had said anything to the companies. They were a little bit worried because now we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in payments and you didn't know anything about this. Our testing program lacked accountability on the user acceptance testing side, so we failed to uncover a significant design flaw because we didn't test for it. And lastly, while the Appian team had done, the professional services team had done an outstanding job of sticking to the scope of the project. We put items in the parking lot, we stuck to our initial scope. If you look at the lack of communication and the poor testing, we had a user community that was not ready to accept a minimum viable product to go as the system of record. So we did lots of things very well on the development side, but we didn't close the deal. So let's come back, and let me get back to one point. The other thing that we did in this process that was, I think, an innovation for us in RMA was Appian Professional Services came into our prime contractor and said, give us a set of requirements, a rough set of requirements. We're going to do this job as a firm fixed price. Most of our development had always been in a cost environment, so as a CIO, I was pretty happy that I had somebody that said, you don't have 25 pages of requirements, but I believe in what you want to do. I want you to buy more licenses. That's part of it, obviously. We're going to come in at a firm fixed price. And at the end of the day, we had one change order on that initial project. So the commitment of Appian Professional Services was really a bootstrap on how we can stick to our guns when we're doing agile development. So you want to say maybe we kind of bumped our head a little bit as we went through this. So what are we going to do? Let's take those parking lot items. Let's start up another project. Let's fix those outstanding design issues. And this time, we're going to talk to the companies the entire time. This time, we're going to hold ourselves accountable to user acceptance testing and go forward. What we had at the time we started this final project was we had our legacy system in production. We had Appian Escrow in production, running in parallel, comparing the accounts for each one. Only one of them was used to make payments, but we had the data from each of them and could compare them in parallel. So we go to Escrow 2.1. Delivered. It became the system of record December of last year. We had planned for a certain amount of work. The team did so well, we did 10% more work and only spent 90% of the dollars. the funny thing, I was just in Kansas City, which is where our major business community is, and I asked them, how are things going? It took them 15 minutes just to keep talking over and over about how well the professional services team did. They talked about, hey, we had an idea of how this user story is going to go, and in days they'd be seeing it. We did 2-week sprints, and the development team was demonstrating code not only at the end of 2-week sprints, but every end of week. They were showing usable code every week, and we were testing every 2 weeks. As we were doing this, we were in the Appian Cloud, so we stayed up to date on versioning, we stayed up to date on the latest application interface. All of those things that worked out in the cloud, we got it done. So what does that mean? This was the first application we delivered in a platform as a service environment. It was the first re-engineered financial application. Our users are ecstatic. They talk to me about the things they did over the holidays. So we went live in December of last year. We had people going out on vacation. Through Tempo, on a personal device, the manager is able to reassign work that previously would have been sitting on somebody's desk. I don't even know they're gone, so I'm not able to make that 3-day payment window. Now I can see it. In fact, the way we've got our Tempo feed set up, if an action doesn't get done in about an hour, somebody gets another notification. So the way in which our users are doing work are fundamentally altered by this social interface, something that none of us were really thinking about when we started. We had an email and network outage happen in December. Shrug it off, we've got another way, Tempo. We kept everything going despite having a shared service email outage for almost a day. And again, I'm going to hit this again, the first of our legacy financial systems re-engineered. It was not the first one started. In fact, I believe our first financial system re-engineering started in 2010 before I even showed up. And we're still not done. So Appian and taking a risk allowed us to do something we had failed to do for almost 5 years. This user group was historically, they're always the last ones. So we'd re-engineer systems. The financial communities would be the last ones to the gate. They get the least amount of money, the least amount of attention because their systems aren't sexy. They may be processing billions of dollars, but this was not the first on the list. 3 re-engineerings in a row. So this group was downtrodden. They didn't believe that we could deliver. They were even a little bit more worried when we get to the end of the initial implementation of Escrow and we're not quite ready to turn that over to the system of record. But again, with agile development, with iterative design, we were able to come back to them and we'll give you an Escrow 2.1 that gives you everything you need. They have faith that our process is going to deliver. When we say we can do this, we're going to give them a product that works. And if we don't get it right the first time, we're going to come back and we're going to fix it. That's something that hasn't happened before. So I talked to you about the product impacts, and they're huge for us. But I think this piece is even more important than anything we did to deliver a product. I talked to you about all of our problems that we had before Appian showed up. We believe that Appian Professional Services and use of this product brought our development of what we call RM Agile. My team came up with this name. I like it. Right? Our approach to agile development, our system development lifecycle was it was integral. Appian's work was integral for us to develop this. It probably accelerated our transition from, I don't even know if I want to call what we were doing waterfall. Transition from our development process that was broken 2.5 years ago to something that is consistently delivering results to our business users. Each production-ready code. We've taken the use of the cloud with Appian and taken some of those processes on how we do on-premise hosting by bringing in our operators into our development process early. We've got engaged decision-making product owners. So I talked to you about a community that was decimated, a community that was beaten down, that was afraid to make decisions. So feedback I got from the professional services team on this last project was, wow, if we have a question or need a decision made, we call up your product owners and boom, they're going to give me an answer in 5 minutes. So we've taken a community that was afraid to make a call to one that's ready, available, and willing to make a call to keep the product moving. We've seen that we can partner in a mission IT services prime contractor and an Appian professional services and deliver value. I can't express the idea that in government we do a lot of things in contracting. We're at many times not very agile in contracting. As a small agency, I rely on the relationships that my prime contractor can build because, frankly, for me to let a contract every time I need to do something, it's 450 of us. That's probably not going to happen. So the relationships that our prime was able to build with Appian and deliver quality and capable product. I'll give you an example. 2.5 years ago, on average, you'd see between 2 and 4 active software development efforts in our environment. Today, we have between 10 and 12 active development efforts going on right now with no significant increase in our budget. 2.5 years ago, we were delivering on-time, on-function performance under 30% at best. Now we're consistently delivering above 80% on-time, on-performance. And when schedules change, it's usually because the business customers come to us and say, we were going to deliver this in a big, heavy cycle time. Can we move it out because we're not going to implement this in a sales close date? So we've got an active engagement. We've got delivery to project, so we are doing things right. Our next step is to try and do the right things. And so the other piece that I find very exciting is, and what BPM brings to our agency is, I've got business owners coming to me going, hey, we've been working on this process for 5 years. We want to revamp how we do production history for crop insurance. We put a notice out to industry in 2011, and we've been talking ourselves to death, but we can't figure out how to do this. Can you bring your BPM guys in here and model what we do today and model what we're thinking about doing so we can figure out how to do this? So the business community now sees IT as a center of excellence in process management. They never came to us for business thinking before we actually showed we could deliver this type of approach, this type of project to the environment. So where are we going in the future? This one's for you, Heath. I sat in Appian World last year and wrote down 24 use cases of things we can go do. I think at the time my desire was to do 5 or 6 of them by the end of 2014. I still have the list, Heath. I still want to get these done. Now, I'll save my prime contractor a little pain. Business cycle drive. So some of these things were not on our high priority for delivering for the business need, but there's a backside to the page too. So I've got even more ideas of what we can go after. I heard a little bit of this discussion on agile architecture processes this morning, and really what I see this as is it's almost kind of a Shark Tank type approach that I'd like to see in our environment. We've got our, we're a big Microsoft shop, so we've got that development platform stack. We've now introduced in this last bullet that Appian's now a development platform. What I'd like to see every time we come up with a project is my main architect for Appian, my main architect for my other platform or platforms, this is why this is the right product, and show me and compete which one of these is best to serve the business. Because we have a bias in our environment. Our bias is to what we have used in the past. Appian is still a niche player in our environment. I think we have an opportunity to become more of a player as we get more and more of these under our belts, but we need some architects to advocate that what is the right solution for the business needs. Thankfully, our process includes our architects in up front. Before we ever start coding, we make that architectural decision on how we go forward. So, future opportunities, deliver business value rapidly, build platform trust, improve documentation and process and requirements through BPM. I think that's what our folks at Bank of the West were talking about. Start slow, build trust. We did it a little bit differently. We may have bumped our heads a little bit as a result of it, but now we're going to go back and start to build that trust and start to build processes that may start in IT but end up in other functional areas. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you very much.